Welcome to Renewed and Radiant for women over 40 who are ready to own their power, prioritize their wellness, and design a life they love. I'm your host, Elsa Martin, and I'm here for the real, raw conversations that we all crave. Whether we're talking healing, hormones, purpose, or pleasure, nothing is off the table. So grab your tea, your journal, or just your earbuds, and let's dive into the empowered, vibrant life that is waiting for you, because your next chapter starts now. All right, today I am so blessed to have one of my very best friends joining me today. She is an amazing human. She's so brave. She inspires me all the time. So I can't wait for you to meet her. She is a rodeo mom, a rodeo wife. I think, even participated a little bit in rodeo herself. Grew up in the Western lifestyle with also a bounce of the urban lifestyle, which has given her the background, what she needed for what she's now doing. She is an incredible woman. Like I said, she's brave, courageous. She's done all kinds of amazing things and took what she saw as a need and then filled the need with something that she was passionate about. So I'm so excited for you all to hear from her today. But yeah, Becky Wigemyr is my guest today, and I'm thrilled to have her here. She is the author of 3 amazing children's books. Like, Becky, I want you to tell us all about it when you hop on here, all about the books. And she's going to share with us what got her from where she was to where she's currently at, which is amazing and incredible. I love what she said. She can be comfortable at a rodeo and she can be comfortable all dressed up at the ballet too. Like, she is so well-rounded, amazing. So thank you, Becky, for joining me today.
Oh, hi, Elsa. I'm just so thrilled. And coming from you, that intro just made me feel so great. And that's the gift that you have, is just the ability to light up other women. And so I thank you for that. And I thank you for this amazing podcast. I think that we can all benefit from this. And it's just going to be something that's so encouraging to women that have dreams and goals and want to move forward and do the things that light them up. So thank you, Elsa. This is great. Thank you for having
I
me.
hope so. Yes, my pleasure. I hope so. That is definitely my goal. So I want everybody to hear some of your story. But first, I always like to start with 3 just little fun rapid fire questions. So you ready?
You bet.
Okay. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Oh, great question. So the first thing I want to say is I would love to go to Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii many times, and it is such a special place. I love it. But that said, I've always wanted to go to Croatia. I've always looked at like Dubrovnik, I think is called, and online. I've never been there. And another thing I'd love to do is a river cruise. So those are 2 things on my bucket list that I would just love to do and haven't done yet.
Okay.
And
Well, fun.
I'm putting this out there in the universe because another thing I'd love to do is go to a Taylor Swift concert. So bad. I'm that 50 something woman. I'm a big time Swiftie, and I would love to get to go and experience her Eras tour. So I'm putting that out there, hoping that maybe it happens for me. Yeah, unexpected.
That is so funny. Oh my goodness. Okay, that is one area we differ in, apparently.
Yeah, that's okay. I think I differ from a lot of people in that area, at
Oh,
least in my demographic. But
that's fun. That is fun. Okay. Next thing, favorite healthy food.
favorite healthy food, I would say avocado is my favorite. I come from a family where there's an old country song that Barbara Mandrell sang that called "I Was Country When Country Wasn't Cool." And I was eating avocado toast when avocado toast wasn't cool. My dad, that was one of his favorite things when we were growing up. And so that was our favorite thing. I have a brother and a younger sister. And it was one of our favorite things. We loved avocado toast. So yeah, that's my favorite healthy food.
Wow, and memories behind it too, obviously, right? I
Right.
love
Right.
that. That's
Yeah.
so good. Okay, last question. Scariest thing you've ever done?
Scariest thing I've ever done. I would say, this is going to sound kind of cliche being what we're going to talk about today, but I feel like writing, the process of starting to write my first children's book was the scariest thing I've ever done.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
so interesting.
right.
Okay, okay. Well, we're just going to roll with that because that is what I want to hear about today. I wanted to have you on here. You're such an encourager and you're so positive and so uplifting. It's one of the reasons we're friends because I love to surround myself with people like you. This podcast is about encouraging women and to, step out and reach their goals and design the life they love so they'll leave the legacy that they want. You're well on that path. Like you are doing it. And I've watched you do this. It's just so incredible. So, tell us a bit of your story. Like, how did you get to where you are today? Sort of, how did this all start? Your books have won so many awards, amazing books. How did you get here?
Okay, well, I've always considered myself a writer. That wasn't necessarily something that I did formally when I was younger. I did write for some rodeo newspapers as a young mom for several years. I did feature articles on different cowboys and cowgirls for a publication called the Ropin' and Rodeo News that had very wide circulation in Western Canada back in the 90s. And that was a real treat for me. It was I didn't get paid very much for it, but being that we were on the rodeo trail, I was always in the right places and I had my finger on the pulse of the rodeo scene in those days. So that was something that I really enjoyed. I specifically enjoyed doing the feature articles where I could dive a little deeper as to the why for cowboys and cowgirls that were at the top of their game. So that was my first real formal dipping my toe into writing, but I've always loved to write. And I always like to tell this story because I think that as adults and as educators, sometimes we underestimate the effect that we can have on people. And because always as a young girl, I had teachers tell me that Becky's such a good creative writer and oh, this is a wonderful story. I had a lot of encouraging teachers growing up.
Mm.
And I had a really great English teacher when I was in grade 10. Her name was Gloria McDonald. And I've looked for her and I can't find her anywhere because she had quite an impact on my life. But then when I was in grade 12, I was the president of the student council in my high school. And every year, the president of the student council had to turn in a yearbook write up. And it was kind of a 2-page spread of what the student council had done that year, what its goals were, that sort of thing. And we had a student council advisor. I'm not sure what his history was now as an adult. I can look back and think, maybe he had some stuff going on himself. But as a 17-year-old student, I just didn't have the experience behind me to be able to see that. But I turned in my article for the student council to the yearbook. And the one thing was our advisor, the student council advisor, had to look it over before I turned it in. And I gave it to him and he read through it and he looked at me and he kind of smirked and he said, "Who wrote this for you?" And I said, "I wrote it." He said, "Who wrote this for you?" I said, "I did." And he said, "Oh, I don't know about that. I'll take your word for it." And he very obviously didn't think that I wrote it. And I don't know if it was because he didn't feel like I was smart enough. That's the way I took it, to write something like I did. And that followed me for a long time. It put some doubt in my mind. And I didn't want to talk to anybody about it because I found that kind of embarrassing that was the way that he saw me. And it followed me for a long time. And it kind of extinguished that fire a little bit for me to write. And I tell that story just because I was really fortunate to be raised by parents that believed in me. And my mom, even to this day, doesn't really think there's very much that I can do wrong. And, so I was really, really fortunate that way, but not everybody is. So I think as adults, we need to really be careful about the things we say and the way we say it to our youth. It's
That's good.
important, right? And
Yes.
so, but all that said, with all the benefits and the advantages that I had with my upbringing, it still followed me for quite a long time.
This is so interesting. The power of our words. I mean, that's a huge takeaway, if nothing else from today, is the power of your words. And don't underestimate the effect that you have on someone else for good or for bad. So our words will determine whether we're going to have a good impact or a negative impact
Right.
for life, right? For a long, long time. That's amazing. Thank you for
Right.
sharing that.
And it can happen like that.
Yes.
And we don't even remember. Right?
It's
So, yeah.
yes, because just how it came across. It was so good that he didn't believe you wrote it. So I mean, it could have went an entirely different direction, right? Like He could have totally just expressed that. This
Right.
is so good. I don't believe you wrote it. Like, did you really write this? Because this is amazing. You know, like just
Right.
his wording, right? It had such a different impact.
Right. And you can't judge a book by its cover. He judged a book by its cover, and and it was hurtful.
You're obviously a great writer, but yeah, 17-year-old, still figuring things out, and then you get this kind of negative comment. Now what?
Well, so I went on to college and took a children's literature class, and no self respecting student would have ever admitted to how much I just craved that class. I loved learning about the history of children's literature, and I couldn't wait to get there. I didn't feel like that about all of my classes, but I couldn't wait to get there. So looking back, I know that that was something that sparked something for me. I loved reading when I was a kid. I'm a reader, I'm a writer, right? That's part of who I am. And as I moved through college, that was definitely the highlight for me. Those classes. And I tell people all the time, if I won the lottery, I would go to university and I would take English literature classes just for fun. I just really enjoy that. So moving on, I got married to my good husband Dwight, and we had two kids fairly close together, and we lived in Fort Macleod at this time. And at that time, I wrote manuscripts for 3 or 4 different stories. I wrote them and I sent them away to publishers, to traditional publishers, and I could have wallpapered my walls with the rejection letters that for different reasons, right? And now I know that I didn't have enough information to really understand how to properly submit, how to present it in a way that more attractive to the traditional publisher. So, that kind of kicked me in the stomach a little bit. And so then moving forward, I was raising my boys and moving through life, and we did hockey and soccer and eventually high school rodeo. I continued to write using whatever opportunity was there. I had a resume and cover letter service for a while that I did at my home when I was raising my kids. And so that was another way that I used my ability to write and to express myself. So then one day, my sister-in-law, Lynette, and I were talking about books. And she was telling me that she was reading a personal development book by John Maxwell called Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. She loaned it to me and I just inhaled it. I devoured it. You know how sometimes it's just the right timing and the right person explaining things. But one of the first sentences in that book was this, and it indelibly left a mark on my life. It said, "What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?"
Oh, that's good. What would
And
you do if you knew you couldn't fail?
right,
That's good.
right. It hit me like a Mack truck. And the first thing I thought, I mean, there was not even a beat that went by when I read that. I thought I'd write those rodeo children's books that I've always wanted to. And that came to me in a heartbeat. And then almost as quickly, the yes buts started happening. And so I was like, yeah, but I've tried this before and it didn't work out. And I don't want to go through that again because that feels terrible. Rejection in whatever form.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
terrible. Nobody likes it. Right. And then, and I don't know where to go and I don't know who to ask. And oh my gosh, would I even be good at it? What if I fail? What will people think of that? All of the things I don't have to explain to anybody because I feel like this is a very common thought process with human beings.
Yes.
Right. So then, the next great decision that I made was that I kept reading John's book. And basically, it went through exactly what happened as soon as I asked myself that question. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? He said, basically, expect the critic to come in and say, you can't do this. And so by the time I finished that book, I learned that all of the thoughts that come into my head are not true. Right.
Can you repeat that? All the thoughts that come into my head are not true.
Right. And you just can't believe everything you think. And
That's right.
and so that was to me the catalyst for everything that came after. It doesn't matter what you want to succeed at, that regardless of whether it is health and nutrition. For my sister-in-law, she's a horse trainer and a barrel racer. And that has led her to great things, right? It's led me to great things. The same principles have led you to great things. And I think that that is the key, is not believing everything you tell yourself about yourself.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
That's so good. Don't believe everything you tell yourself about yourself. That is
Right.
so powerful. Okay, let's fast forward to now. Here you
Okay.
are, working
Okay.
full time, and in the midst of that, written three children's books. You got to explain why the demographic, who you're talking to with those books.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. So I have this really great job that I love a lot. I work for an oil and gas company. I have for, I want to say 22 or 23 years now, worked for the same oil and gas company, but raised my kids. I've got two boys. They're both now married and have families of their own. But at the time, we're going through post secondary, moving through their life. And all of a sudden, I had a few more hours in my day.
Mm.
And I had a few minutes of maybe empty nest, and then I knew enough to put a stop to that and just say, now this is your time to do the things that you want to do. And so I read the John Maxwell book, let that kind of roll around in my head for a while, and then I just thought, I'm doing it. And so I've always wanted to write books for kids just like my boys, Elsa, right? I had two boys that were the kind of reluctant readers. Neither of them really loved to read, and it shocked me because I was that mom. I read to them every night, but they just weren't that into it. And so I was always looking for books that they would like, right? And they loved books about rodeo. They loved books about tractors. They loved books that they could see themselves in. I remember going to the Canadian Finals Rodeo one year, and there was always a big trade show there. And there was a couple of little boutique stores that would have a handful of books that were set at a rodeo or set on a ranch or set on a farm. And I would rush to those booths and buy up what they had for my kids. And so fast forward to this time that I was referring to earlier, where I read the book by John C. Maxwell. We were at the CFR again. This time my husband was there judging a rope course futurity. And I ran into a younger friend of mine, and her kids were very young at the time. She was with her girlfriend, and they were both at the trade show shopping, and the rodeo was going to start in about a half an hour. And Kara said to me, Becky, we have to run because we have to go to that booth with all the good kids books before it closes. And so they ran away, and I remember this like this is just one of those pivotal moments. And I remember watching them walk away, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is still a problem. And so I'd already been thinking about my children's books again. And then I just was like, I've got to do this. I was a member of an online grateful group. That's what we called it, where basically there was a group of about 15 people. And every morning when I would get to the office, we would practice gratuity. And so we would just send a grateful list via email. And so I had a lot of these girls I had never met face to face, but that morning I did my grateful list, and then I said, hey, do any of you know anybody that has published a children's book? And one of the girls said, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law have published several children's books,
Oh.
and maybe I could get her to talk to you. And so she gave me their contact information, and we met for coffee, and we connected right away as women. She's a really cool lady. And they were generous enough to help me, she and her husband.
Oh.
And that to me was the, TSN turning point in this, right? And then from there, I just literally one step at a time. The first thing I did was I wrote my story. And then I educated myself on the editing process and hired a professional editor. And then I moved forward with, okay, now how do I get this into a physical book? So this is my first book here, Cowboy Cody. And
Yay.
and so that was my next challenge. And I really looked at it like an adventure,
Ah,
right? And that was the greatest thing. And as crazy as this sounds, the journey was better than the destination,
wow.
right? I I loved that, right? By the time I've done these three books and I'm proud of all three of them, but I promise you, nothing was more exciting than the first book and what it took to get there. Because that's, for me, that's where the beauty, because that's where the beauty was, because I learned so much. It was so exciting. Every day I was overcoming something, doing something I thought I couldn't do. I would get so nervous. Oh, I have no idea. How am I going to know? Or how am I going to afford this? Or, all of this stuff. And I just took it in little small increments and I solved one problem. And then I solved the next problem. And I tried not to look at all of it. I tried to look at it one little baby step at a time. And it was great. Yeah.
That's amazing. Like, what a story of resilience. Like 17. Okay, just being told that when you're a 17-year-old girl, getting the feeling you're not smart enough to write it. And then, however many years later, as a young mom, and we know what it's like to be in that stage of life and having, all the publishers that you send it to, rejection letters like that. Oh my goodness, that is hard to take. But
Right.
you kept going. And what I love is that you paid attention to what sparked you.
Right.
That's so good. Like it wasn't something that you were like, "Oh, I'm going to do it, just for because somebody else thinks I should or, for whatever any other reason." It was because it was inside of you. It sparked you. You wanted to do this. It was something that you were passionate about obviously from a long, long time.
Right. And I think too, I just need to be really honest here. When I was doing it, one thing that I didn't do was I didn't tell a lot of people that I was doing it because I knew that for a lot of reasons, people can really squash your dreams. If
Yes, let's
you,
just say it like it is. Some people, they're either for whatever reason, either because their life sucks and they aren't working towards goals, or for any other reason, whatever their reason, sometimes they don't always respond well to our goals. But that's
right,
what I always say too, right? It's not their dream, it's not their vision, it's not their goals. They don't have to understand it. You
right.
have to understand it. You have to know your why.
I knew that I had to keep this quiet until I was done or my fire could be extinguished and I had a full-blown inferno to do this. And so I really was careful about who I told that I was writing this first book. And the other thing I think that we have to be honest with ourselves about is that nobody is going to believe that you can do something until you prove that you can do it. Like, to be fair to all those people, maybe they need to see that you can do what you say you're going to do, because why would people believe that you can do something that you've never proven you can do? So I was really careful. Honestly, my husband and my two kids pretty much were the only ones that knew I was doing this. And for three guys that sometimes they're not overly sensitive, all three of those guys were so encouraging to me. But really, I didn't tell anybody else. I just did it. I had a few people in the writing community that I worked with that were really fired up for me too. And other than that, I basically, when I was releasing the book, that's when I announced it. And I'm glad that I didn't, because I don't know if I would be here today had I told the world early on.
That's good. There's so much wisdom in that. Be careful who you share your dreams and your goals with. Also, the value of recognizing the importance of the community that you surround yourself with, right? We need positive people around us that are going to encourage and support our dreams and our goals. And
Right.
if you're not at that place right now, be very careful. Either way, if, share it in your community. And if you don't have that, be very careful who you do share it with.
Right.
There's so much wisdom in that. Yes,
Right.
yes.
And another thing that I am going to really stress as well is those people that were encouraging and behind me and pushing me along. I went and looked for those people, right? So I found a group of like-minded business people that were those people for me. And when I needed some encouragement or I needed a kick in the butt, that's who I got it from, right? So you find your people, you find your tribe. That's everything. It was everything in this circumstance for me.
Absolutely. I think it is everything, especially when you're working towards a big goal, a big thing that you want to accomplish. We cannot do it on our own. It takes a village, right? And so we need to surround ourselves with people that we can support and encourage them, and they can support and encourage us. It's so powerful.
Right, exactly, Elsa. And just to go back to why these rodeo theme books that I wrote, I really wanted to make sure that there was more in the marketplace for kids like my boys and their friends, for reluctant readers, for little boys and girls that maybe the idea of reading doesn't really turn them on. But if they're able to see themselves and see something that they are passionate about in these books, it might encourage them to get into books a little bit more. Because I think it's James Patterson. He said, there's no such thing as kids that don't like reading. There's just kids that haven't found the right books. And, and I know that my Cowboy Cody books and my Wild West Kids books, which we'll maybe talk about in a little while, they're not books for everybody, but they're books for a lot of kids, right? So if they're the right books for your kids, that's the niche that I'm going to fill. And that's going to be my legacy, is making sure that there are books for the boys and girls that this is their thing, right? They might not be everybody's thing,
It's
but they're
so
certain.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, those books are so well written and so beautifully illustrated that when, if it's your child's thing, or you might not even know it's your child's thing, that they have an interest, or they might not even know yet that they love learning about cowboys and rodeo and horses and all the things. And it's not just that. Yeah, they're nice books to read for the kids, but there's always such a powerful underlying lesson that they're getting. And I'm all about that they're getting as they read it, or as their parent is someone's reading it to them. So it's not just a nice story. There's a lesson that they're getting in it too, which is so powerful as well. So I really appreciate that, Becky. Like, so
Um,
good. So
I'm
good.
so glad, Elsa. So this is a really neat story. When I first released my first book, I went into the city that we live in has a very multicultural population. And I released my book at the beginning of May in 2017. And then our local rodeo is the beginning of June. And so one of my friends is a teacher at one of the schools and asked me to come in and read, for rodeo week, read this book. It fit really well. It was my first reading at a school, which was really great. But I went into a pre-K classroom. So they're all 4-year-olds. And everybody but one was ESL, English as a second language. I walked in and I thought to myself, if I'm being honest, I thought, oh, she's going to be a tough rodeo crowd in here, right? Maybe had never seen a rodeo, never been to a rodeo. And it was such a wonderful lesson for me, Elsa. Like, I went in and I sat with these sweet little kids and I read. First of all, they spoke better English than I did. They were incredible. And it was really good for me because they just learn so quickly and they're amazing. And this one little boy, I read this, it's about sheep riding, this story. And after I read the book, we talked about how there is an event called mutton busting at the local rodeo. And he was like, I want to go in the mutton busting. And I said, maybe next year, because this year entries had closed. And anyway, my girlfriend told me that the next year, this little guy entered the sheep riding at the local rodeo. And I was so happy about that, because that for me is huge, right? To not only supply reading material to kids that is the lifestyle that they've been brought up in, but to educate and bring people to rodeo and the Western lifestyle so that they can better understand it. Like, that probably is one of the best memories I have from that time, is that little guy. And I'll never forget his little face. And he was so excited.
Yeah, making an impact, leaving the legacy. You mentioned the word legacy. I love that. You are definitely having such an impact on future generations. It's amazing, Becky. It's so good. You like to recap with a few takeaways. I have so many here, but what stood out to me, number one, is don't underestimate the effect that you have on other people, the effect of your words. That's huge. And then also that you decided, this is my time. I'm doing it. And a lot of the ladies that I work with their health and their wellness, same thing, right? Maybe our kids are growing and we're at this stage in life where it's like you finally have a few extra minutes. You're not constantly running with the kids. And so this can be your time. And I love that you said, I'm doing it. I'm just going to do it. And you recognize that this was your time to take for you. It's so good. And then look at it like an adventure. I like that. 'Cause there's going to be times when we're working towards our goals, no matter what the goal is, it can be big or small. There's going to be times where it's grind. It is a grind. And maybe we want to quit and we think we can't figure it out. But to reframe our thought process on that and look at it as an adventure. I love that. Okay, we have to finish with one practical step. Take the first baby step. I think inherently we kind of know the thing that we could do today to get us there, but it's so often fear or rejection or our thoughts inside of our head that's stopping us from taking that baby step. So just take the baby step. Just do it. Just do it. And we're cheering you on. Thank you for joining me today on Renewed and Radiant. I hope today's conversation sparked something in you, a shift, a question, or even a bold new intention. If you loved this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another amazing woman. Until next time, stay strong, stay empowered, and keep showing up for yourself. Because you, my friend, are just getting started on designing a life you love.